Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today is episode number 6 of my series about becoming a bikini competitor. We're going to be looking at stage 4 of my 5 recommended stages to becoming a competitor, which is choosing a show. We're going to talk about picking a date, the different federations that you can compete with, and then selecting the show that's going to work best for you. By the end of this video, I'm hoping that you'll feel much more comfortable with selecting a date and booking your show. I really hope that by sharing my experiences with you, that you can move forward with confidence when selecting the right show for you. I will also give an update into how my own prep's going as I get closer to my next show, which is my pro debut in Portugal with WABA, and that's taking place in just 2 weeks now. So really exciting times, and everything's booked, so it's all guns blazing right up to show day now. If you enjoy this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and hit that bell to alert you every time I post a new video every Monday. Stages 1 to 3, we looked at understanding why it is you want to compete. We looked at how getting a coach could benefit you as a bikini competitor. And then we've looked at implementing nutrition and training into your lifestyle. So now the next step is to look at choosing a date and picking a show. If you have been able to enlist the help of a coach, then they're going to work with you on timelines and dates as to what you're looking to achieve. If your overall goal is to compete, then I'd imagine you would have discussed that with your coach and you would have looked at dates that you've got in mind. What I want to do today is look at how we can make this realistic and the sort of things that you need to consider when you're looking at choosing your date. There are 3 big factors that I'd like you to consider when looking at selecting your date. So the first one is making it realistic. When you're looking to diet down and get ready for a bodybuilding show, it's definitely worthwhile to have plenty of time to do that. When you start your journey, depending on where you're starting from, you're going to need to look at where you're at physically and mentally, where your physique is at, and when you diet down, how your physique is going to look. Speaking from experience, during my first prep, I realised that I wasn't carrying much muscle mass due to not having much experience with weight training. I didn't realise this until I got to the leaner stages of my first prep, and when I got to my first competition I realised that actually I definitely needed to grow a lot more and have at least one good off season to be able to put on some muscle mass. But I still learnt a hell of a lot from that first prep. I was able to realise what I needed to improve on. I was also able to realise that I wanted to be a competitor. I wanted to continue my journey. What you can look at here is you can either look to do a prep for a photo shoot, see what you look like when you get there, and then decide whether you'd like to compete off the back of that. Or you can book the photo shoot, get to that leaner stage. If you know you need a lot more improvements to be able to become more competitive in the bikini category, then you can look to do an off season and then prep a second time for a show. So when I say making this realistic, I'd like you to take all of that into consideration, and when you select the date that you're going to head for, perhaps have it in the back of your mind that if you've decided to book a shoot before the potential show that you're going to compete in, that might be what your prep is aimed at, and it might stop there and you go straight into an off season. By making it realistic and your expectations being there that you want to see what you look like when you diet down, and then you've got the potential to compete, you're going to set yourself up for success. I would then like you to consider what you have coming up. If you've got things in your diary, in your life that are coming up that could potentially get in the way of going into a stage prep, then it's worth thinking about starting after those events if it's something that's quite big for you, or working out if you need a little bit longer for your period of prep to be able to factor in that time where you're going to be experiencing an event. It could be a big birthday, it might be a close family member getting married. There's lots of different things that could come up that could potentially mean that you need to come away from your prep for a period of time and go back in. I personally would prefer to prep after something if it's going to be a big event that means something to me and I want to immerse myself fully in that, with food, with different things. If you can start the prep after and then head for a date that's going to give you a nice clear run. That's ultimately going to be the best path to getting through a prep and succeeding. If you want to have that event in the middle and it's going to mean that you need to come away from your prep and then go back in, you're going to need to think about allowing time for that and bolting that onto your potential prep. Once you've considered making this realistic, also what you have coming up, you want to start to put plans in place for how long your prep is going to last. There's lots of different options here and it's not one size fits all. Everyone is different. I've done preps as long as 30 weeks because they were extended over a period of time competing more than once. But I've also done preps that are shorter. So at present, this prep is 21 weeks. I know people that prep for 10 or 12 weeks, depending on where they're starting from. Personally, I'd say the shorter preps are going to be for more advanced competitors. By allowing a bit longer when you're first looking to compete and start your journey to the stage, you can allow for lots of different things that may come up throughout your prep. This is where I definitely think the advice from a coach is going to be extremely beneficial for you, especially your first time going into a stage prep. There's a lot of things that you want to consider, and by having the help of a coach, a professional in the field of bodybuilding, it's going to help your way to success. What you could do is look at selecting a month that would work really well for you. In 2018, when I was looking at what shows I wanted to do in 2019, I was looking at April 2019 as the month where I wanted to do my first show. What this did was it opened up lots of different options for me when selecting a show. So I decided April. I then had a look at what federations had shows available during that month. I looked at the locations where the shows were taking place, looked at the federations, and then I started to weigh up who I wanted to compete with and what date that would fall on for my show. Having looked at choosing a date, we can now start to think about what federation you want to compete with. Bodybuilding has multiplied over the last few years and there's a hell of a lot of shows that you can pick from. And ultimately, it depends on which federation is going to suit you as an athlete, but also what your aspirations are as a competitor. Something else you do want to have on your radar is if you're going to go with a tested federation or an untested federation. Let's look at the different options you can start to think about when looking at picking the federation that you'd like to compete with. If this is your first prep and you purely want to complete a prep, get to stage condition and see how you get on at a show, then you may find the federation you pick isn't too much of an issue for you. You may find that you've chosen the date you want to compete, there's a couple of different federations and you choose the one you like the look of, and that's absolutely fine. You may, however, have aspirations of doing a qualifier and then being able to get an invite to the British finals, or it might be that you want to look at doing a show that could potentially open the doors to competing internationally. This may be something you look at further down the line, but it is going to depend largely on your experience with training before going into your first prep and the muscle mass that you're carrying, which I've already mentioned, where your physique is at, and also recommendations from your coach if you're looking at working with a professional. If you're a natural athlete and you'd like to stay that way, then it's worth looking at the tested federations. Now, there's not as many available, but if this is important to you, you want to compete on a level playing field, then that's going to need to cross your mind. It may also be that if your intention is to purely compete, that you're not too worried about whether it's a tested or untested federation that you compete with. If you're looking at using performance enhancing drugs, then the federations are a lot more open to you and there's a lot more different options that you may want to consider. But this depends on what route you want to go down. When I first competed, there wasn't as many federations available, and I started by choosing a day and just doing a show that suited that day. Over the years, I've then been able to veer my path towards competing with federations that I am compelled towards because of their ethos, because of what they give back to the competitors. And I'm now working towards my pro debut with WABA, and I'm really, really happy with WABA as a federation. This is an international federation, and it's been awesome to take my journey from being an amateur to now competing abroad. The first federation that I found worked really well for me as an athlete was UKUP. Their morals and their values as a federation really did hit home for me. Their motto is with the athletes, for the athletes, and you get that vibe at their shows. The atmosphere is incredible, and the qualifier I did in April 2019 was awesome. It was my first experience with those guys, and I won that show. I was able to qualify for the British finals and pursue that with UKUP. I then went on to do an independent show called Rhinos, which qualified me for WABA. And that took me onto my path as a WABA pro. So I've experienced lots of different federations, lots of different shows, and I've found the federation that I want to pursue. What I'd recommend is that you have a look at the federations that have shows around the date that you want to compete. Have a look at their website, their Instagram, different athlete stories, and get a feel for what that federation offers and if that's the federation that you would like to compete with. So far we've covered picking a date and what to look out for when choosing the federation that you'd like to compete with. Before we move on to choosing your show, I'd like to answer a listener question that came up in one of my previous YouTube videos. Thank you to Amy for sending the question in. She asked, should you have a coach when you're going into an off season? I personally would say that you need a coach throughout your journey as a competitor, whether you're in prep or whether you're in your off season. Now, particularly off the back of a show, when you're going to look to go into an off season, unless you have another show coming up, the support you can gain from having a coach to look out for you after the show is invaluable in my mind. It's a very daunting place you can find yourself in. You've prepped for, it could be anything from 10 weeks to 30 weeks. It's a long period of time that you've committed to a certain date. You've got to low body fat levels. You've been through a hell of a lot of experiences. Then suddenly the show is done and it's, what do I do now? So to have a confidant there, to have someone that's professional, that knows what they're doing, to me is extremely important. So Amy, yes, I would recommend that you continue with your coach after your show and get you ready to go into your off season where you can make the improvements needed. Let's talk about actually choosing your show. It's so exciting to finally select the date, the show, the federation, everything that goes into what your prep is going to be geared towards. A few things that are going to help you seal the deal on your first show and what federation you're going to choose are, first of all, looking at the location of the show. So it needs to be viable for you to be able to get there, whether you need accommodation, and the cost implications to that. You also want to look at how much it is to enter and whether you need a membership for the federation. And something else I definitely look at considering is the categories that the federation offers. The bikini class has grown massively over the last few years, and the federations will look to separate you into potentially height categories, age categories, and your experience as a competitor. Some federations offer different categories like model, wellness. The more independently run shows, you may find that the bikini category is grouped into one with different ages, different heights, and different experiences. So it's worth considering this when selecting your show and the federation that you're going to compete with. When you're looking to compete for the first time, remember you might want family and friends there. So things like the location is going to come into play. Can they get there? You also want to consider how much spectator tickets are and if that's viable for the ones that you want to have with you there on show day. Now, I hope this video hasn't blown your mind too much about the things that you want to consider when choosing your first show. But it is certainly things that I believe you need to consider. You want to set yourself up so that this is as seamless as possible. You want to complete your prep, get to show day, and know that you've picked a show that's going to suit you as an individual and as a competitor. Ultimately, guys, if this is your first show, it's something you want to get excited about. You want to immerse yourself. You want to enjoy your prep leading up to the show. So if you've ticked off all of the things we've spoken about today, then I hope that this is going to make this less stressful and give you confidence in your approach as you enter your first prep. Before we sign off today, I'd like to give you a little update into how my prep is going. So like I said at the start of the video, I've got 2 weeks to go now, and it's so surreal. This year has thrown so many curveballs to a lot of us. We're in lockdown number 2, and there's so many different things coming everyone's way that is challenging us both mentally and physically. Having that show in my mind and giving me that focus has been awesome, and it really has helped me push through the challenges I've personally felt throughout the lockdowns and what we faced this year. Last week I did have a bit of a stall on the weight loss. I found that I was holding some water and I did actually go up in weight for a few days, but that has come down nicely. My macros, like I mentioned in last week's video, did go down and my cardio went up. So weight training has remained the same 5 times a week, although at the moment I'm training legs 3 times a week, so it's good. It's hard. And I'm doing upper twice. My cardio that I'm doing, I'm equating to 2,400 calories per week. So that's around 240 minutes of cardio. My macros have gone down, so my carbohydrates are 100, my fats are 35, and my protein is 160. I also have one refeed day where my carbs go up to 200 now instead of 300. So I'm pushing for that last couple of weeks, heading into peak week. At times, my body is feeling on the fatigued side, but at the moment, I do feel remarkably well for being this close to a show. So I'll keep ticking the boxes, enjoying my prep, and keeping those eyes on the prize. I honestly hope that this video has helped you guys, and any feedback is welcome. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button to show me, subscribe to my channel and hit that bell to alert you every time I post a new video. But for now, goodbye, and I'll see you next week where we're going to talk a little bit more into the cost of becoming a competitor.